I'm Helen Norbury, and this is Becoming Unapologetically Me, the show all about authentic self-expression with expert guests from the fields of health, leadership, and mindset. This show is here to show you that you don't need to conform to the expectations that friends, family, and society have of you. And actually, what we can unearth when we find the courage to become the unapologetic version of who we are. Grab a cup of coffee and get your notepad out for this week's episode. Hello, and welcome back to Becoming Unapologetically Me. I'm really excited today to be talking to Lauren Lepley. Her journey has been nothing short of inspiring, and she has a really exciting path ahead of her as well. So, Lauren, I'd love to start by talking to you about your personal journey with cancer. And can you please tell me a bit about that experience and the time from when you first found out that you had a cancer diagnosis up until today?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so I was diagnosed in October 2018. And I had already started on a health and well-being journey by that point. So it was a bit of a, you've got to be kidding me, really? Unfortunately, there was far too much damage that had been laid out in previous years to that, other than the year before. And it was a tough time. And I was in my health and fitness journey, and I was a PT. I'd already kind of got rid of an old version of myself, which was global operations director, like for multiple agencies, whether they be luxury design or advertising or fashion, music. So it had been such a big change for me already by that point. And I thought that everything from then was going to be great.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, okay, I've kicked to the curb all the addiction issues. I've dealt with so many things. We've done this. Congratulations. Well done, Lauren. And then it was a bit like, what? No way. And I had 6 weeks earlier been proposed to and accepted that proposal.
Oh, wow.
And so it was kind of like, oh, you're sure you're up for all of this? There were so many different layers of what was going on at the time. And so I started treatment. Then we found out, actually prior to that, we found out I couldn't start my treatment immediately. Being someone that wanted to have children, hadn't already had children, I had to go through a whole fertility stage before my treatment began.
Right.
So like egg retrieval and then that wasn't a great journey. That wasn't easy. That didn't go to plan.
I'm going to say that in and of itself is quite an emotional journey and, not necessarily the easiest from what I understand anyway, just aside from a cancer diagnosis.
Well, as we know, anything that disrupts the hormones in the body is never a nice journey. It's never easy. And so having to go through like lots of hormonal changes and excessive hormones being given to me to try and speed things up to deal with that process, we finally got to the best place that we could with that. And we started immunotherapy treatment. Now, that also didn't go to plan. I'm allergic to my cancer treatment that I was given.
Oh, wow.
So the first time that I went through that, we had a bit of an issue that my mum was with me for that first one and she thought they'd killed me. So that was a big issue, a big performance. It felt like when I look back on it now, all I know is that all the screens came around me, all the doctors were called, and I was still and not doing very much and body spasming and things. Yeah, so that wasn't really a good induction into getting better. You never want to start, oh, this is all good for you. It's time to make you well completely. Oh, but we're going to go through some massive, massive traumatic events on the way there. So you're welcome. Yeah. I mean, I'm smiling about it now because I'm here and I've got through it. But honestly, at the time, from that moment on, it was hell, to be honest. I was having, from that moment, the whole way through, so give it a good year, 18 months of like 3 serious panic attacks a week.
Gosh.
for no reason. It wasn't that, I was thinking about things and I'd induced them. It honestly was just subconsciously, just my body was just not able to deal with everything that was going on. I mean, it was, in the 15 years leading up to that, there were so many different traumatic events that led me to live the lifestyle that I did prior and things like that. And it just was like the straw that broke the camel's back, really. Mm-hmm. It was I just kind of gave up.
Do I read into that then that you kind of put lifestyle down as if there is such a thing as a cause of cancer, but do you kind of see your life prior to sort of kicking the things to the curb, as you talked about, whether that's stress, whether it is addictions, any of those other things as well, do you see that as being or creating the conditions that got you to where you were?
You read that correctly. Yes, I do. I lived a very stressful life. Most of the stress coming from myself and the things that I was doing to myself. I was working 7 days a week, day and night in the industries that I was working in. There were events all the time. I'd be at them all. I was drinking a lot, doing a lot of other stuff that I shouldn't have been doing at the time. Yeah. And, just as we know how trauma and stress implicates the body, it had been doing that for a very, very long time, from childhood traumas and through losing my brother, through so we had suicide. I had, mental health and eating disorders myself, sexual abuse, rape. A very, very, very close friend was murdered the year before that. It was literally so
non-stop.
Yeah. And I absolutely believe that it was the strain on my body from those stresses and the consequent chronic stress, not even from the job, but from
life.
Just what life. Yeah. I absolutely believe it was that.
Absolutely. And, we're designed in a great way with that sort of flood of cortisol for the moment that we need to flee from the saber-toothed tiger, aren't we? But we're not designed to live in a place where that's just coursing through our veins day in, day out, without any kind of let up. And I find it really interesting, actually, when I have conversations with people who kind of always find a medical reason for something without looking at the effect of that cortisol sort of coursing through their veins 24/7, 365 days a year for year after year after year. And it's obviously a stressful experience then for you to go through not just the diagnosis, but the treatment as well. And having supported my mum through her version of the journey with that, I know quite what an emotional roller coaster it can be. So as that progressed, what did it look like for you as you sort of moved through your treatment and closer to coming out the other side?
Well, the issue came when it grew into COVID. And my treatment wasn't complete and my treatment got cancelled.
Oh, no.
So, and I was put into immediate shielding. I was right up on the top of the list, especially, with immunotherapy. I'm immunosuppressant technically for the rest of my life, although I don't particularly agree with that now with other things that I've done with myself. Yeah, immediate shielding. It was petrifying. I had letters from the Prime Minister, Minister of Health, my doctor, the hospital. Every single week, I had a letter through the post saying to me, do not go outside, do not talk to anyone, literally just stay in your room and don't do anything. You're going to die if you do so. It was really, really tough. And I was so petrified. There was no moment when I thought, do I even want an opinion on this? Am I going to think for myself?
Yeah.
It was
being taken away from you through the fear.
Absolutely. I was so much in a place of fear that I just became this person. I mean, I quite like it now, who did nothing but read books and watch YouTube and train myself and listen to things and just dive deeper and deeper and deeper, literally a bookworm, like finding all the ways through any information I could find about the body and about how I could help myself.
Yeah. I guess at that time, the use of Zoom and things like that as ways of staying connected to people kind of became the norm for everybody. But there is a real impact to losing that in real life human connection as well, isn't there? And how did you cope with that side of the enforced isolation?
Well, we'd just moved from London in the December prior to, so it happened that COVID was March. In the December, we just moved from London down to Devon. And luckily, we were in a beautiful big farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. So that did improve things for me, because at some point I said to the doctor, listen, look out of my window. You're on the screen. I can't see anybody. Please tell me it's okay to walk in that field. But, but that connection thing was so hard. My first wedding anniversary was through a wall.
Oh, wow. So you couldn't even see your husband, and
no,
you were isolated for him as well.
Yeah, it was really tough. And, as we know, the whole world is in some level of trauma from it. Everyone has an adverse response going on in their worlds right now from something that happened during that COVID period, whether it was a loss of a job, the change of the way that one could work, the change of seeing family, the stopping of the traveling, so many factors, children not going to school, not being able to go to the supermarket. I mean, that was one benefit. I won't lie. I had all the priority slots. Every priority slot at every supermarket, I was like, yes, have a slot.
The only person who can get deliveries.
Yeah.
Amazing. So this might be a silly question, but I don't believe there is such a thing. How did it feel when you finally heard from the doctor that actually now you're cancer-free and you don't have to bring this part of you along with you anymore, and you can rest that part of you? How did that feel?
Bizarre, because my diagnosis was you're living with this forever. It wasn't ever due to go away. And then having a conversation with the doctors and being like, oh, are you sitting down? I'm like, oh my word, what is wrong? Like nothing, absolutely nothing is wrong, to the extent that we see no signs of cancer whatsoever. But at this point, I had been having scans, MRI scans, CT scans, all my bloods, everything, every 3 months. And then, and it was just, well, we'll see you in 2 years. A little bit, I was a bit nervous thinking, oh, but what if? Like maybe I should just come back and have more scans anyway, just in case. Maybe I just need to be checked. What else do I need to have checked? Like, what do you mean no one's going to talk to me for 2 years? It took me a while to actually let it sink in. So it was the 4th of July last year, 2024. And when I had that conversation, and I don't think until the end of the year, I really, really was able to be, oh yeah, that was a thing that was a once issue with me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so from being told that this is what you've got forever to then get into that place on the 4th of July, what an amazing result. But what do you put that down to? Like, why do you think that was able to happen?
Well, my consultant did say to me, what have you been doing? And I said, everything you told me not to. I was when I was first under the Royal Marsden and I spoke to the dietitians, they were like, oh, you need to come off of your plant-based diet. We'd like you to take this. We'd like you to eat in this way. And I refused. And they were like, well, there are no studies on this this journey on a plant-based diet. I was like, well, that's great. I'll start it.
Yes. Person one.
Exactly. Consider this the beginning of the experiment. Yeah, so I stuck to that and I researched and I looked into the supplements that I wanted to work with. And I decided on, in this situation, as much as possible, positivity, which is so right now it still seems quite bizarre that that's what I was trying to get to. The positivity side of things, and to be honest, I think one of the biggest problems was I'd had 15 surgeries in 18 months for this.
Wow.
And I had to stop training. I couldn't do any of the things that I had become accustomed to being my nice way of life, the good for me way of life. And I could only do really small things. So I had to stop being a PT, actually. And I ended up managing a gym because, for one, I had so much experience in a managerial position, but also because obviously I didn't want to leave that world. I wanted to stay in it. Yeah, so I did stay fit. I stuck even more rigidly to a plant-based whole food diet, became pretty strict about it, and took my supplements and did my positivity and a lot of breath work.
Right.
So a lot of the study that I became engrossed in was all about cellular health and how we can support our body and our mind looking at cellular health. And so breathwork became a big thing for me, looking at how our bodies work and the use of oxygen within our bodies and how, what more could I do? Literally, it was all out there. And that's I just couldn't get enough of it.
And is that still your routine today in terms of how you continually optimize your health?
Absolutely. Every single day I will work with somatic movement. Every day I will do soma breath work. Every day I only eat plant-based food. I now have a whole cafe that is only plant-based whole foods.
Amazing. I wish I lived nearer to you.
And my world is now completely full of where I was, where I am now, and how I can support other people doing the same.
Yeah. So now you're looking to kind of evolve this even further to become the alternative doctor. I was reading your strapline of, where science meets soul and healing meets transformation. And I absolutely love that. It's just, that really talks to me. But how do you see that it's going to really change the face of health and wellness? Because it does sound like it will, but how do you see that it will?
My biggest goal here moving forward is enabling people to have the right information with the full understanding of the full situation. I've always been one of those people that has annoyed everyone because I'm like a never grown up toddler. Why? Like, it's like there's like 30 whys if someone tries to explain something to me. I'm like, but why that? Why did you get to that conclusion? What were the 5 thought processes that led you there? I just have to have everything. It's done me well. Yeah. So it's a case of people needing the right information because it's not given to them. And it's not because doctors want to withhold information. That's not the case. It's just the fact that they aren't aware of the full picture and they cannot give you the full information.
You know what? It absolutely blew my mind when I found out that there's no module, if that's the right word, on trauma in classical medical teaching. So how do you not know about trauma if you're training to become a doctor? It's mind-blowing. That's such a fundamental part that's going to underpin every other part of medicine, and yet you're not going to talk about that bit. So I get what you're saying, but it's not, it's not malice in any way that they're withholding stuff. They just haven't been taught it.
Well, it's exactly that. They've not been taught it. They've not got the understanding to a deep enough level that they can ever share that in a medical profession as, within the trauma side of things. But it's the same about nutrition. Doctors aren't trained in nutrition. So doctors aren't trained in the one thing that has all the effects on the body with depending on the consumption of what one takes. Food, drink. They're not trained in that space. And it is all of it. It's scary. It really is quite scary.
Particularly if you think about the obesity crisis. And I'm imagining that doctors have conversations with people on a fairly regular basis about what they shouldn't be eating or what they should be eating in terms of managing their weight and their health and things like that. But yet coming at it from a place of distinct lack of knowledge.
Well, a doctor can only give out, we're talking about the GP specifically here. When you go to the doctor, they can only give out generic even, they can only give out generic advice because that is what they are, a general practitioner. And to give the specific advice to each person would be too costly for them because they'd have to be so aware of, so much more training than what they currently have. And then they'd have to be able to give the full panels of bloods to check on me everything, which they don't like to do, to be able to give each individual the correct answer for them. So they do blanket it. They do cookie cut it. Okay, eat, like this is the amount of calories that you should be having. And yes, your plate should look like this. And yeah, they do. People are now at certain points told that they should consider exercise and that they should eat better. But I had someone that came to me that had been to the doctor for obesity. And they came to me with multiple different diagnoses. They'd been on a plan with the doctor and they said, yes, I do have like my 5 a day. I asked them to write a plan for me of what they'd been eating, and Heinz tomato soup was on there because it was considered
a tomato.
I can't even get the words out. It was considered part of their 5 a day.
Wow. Something processed and in a tin.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it does become quite scary when that's what we're dealing with. Yeah. So, and it's...
So what do you think it takes then, given the source of the knowledge and how diluted that is? What do you think it takes for the masses to be able to prioritize their health and to do it in a way that is actually in line with what your body needs, not hype?
Okay. Well, I'm going to let everyone hate me for a moment, and they will hate me until they take action, because I want everyone to stop searching for the answer that they want that makes their life easy.
Yeah.
I want people to know that actually what they need to do is the thing that they're refusing to do, which is actually, 1, take responsibility for their own health, and 2, understand that they personally have to do the things. Tablets are not going to do it. I have it's another conversation, I guess, or not. Tablets, like medications, they should, yes, I think the medical world that we have is incredible. But medication is handed out here, there, and everywhere way too easily before other methods are tried. For example, we know that 1 course of antibiotics in a year can decrease the immune system by 24%.
Wow.
2 courses of antibiotics a year decrease the immune support system by 56%.
Gosh.
So,
and yet you get them left, right, and centre.
You get them left, right, and centre. And if that one didn't work, well, let's try another one. And, but what we want to think about here is, okay, medication is expensive. If the pharma world would ever let us do this, let's try not giving out medication. Let's try doing some other things. Let's try going back to the ancient ways of living. Let's use our bodies. Yeah. Let's carry things around the shops. Let's not have all, let's see the daylight in the mornings. Let's walk. Let's eat some fresh food from the ground. But you've got to do the do. You've got to go back to the ancient ways, because all of what worked would still work. It's just we have fancy ways of spending money to try and do it differently, that ultimately, in my opinion, just decreases our immune system and our, to be quite honest, by doing that, you also relinquish up the control that you have on your body. And when you don't feel in control of your body, you put yourself into a space of not being safe.
Yeah.
And we know that the primal part of our body needs to feel safe. So,
and that's really interesting conundrum, in fact, because we know that we're wired to find the easiest way to do something. So if that is taking the medication or doing, finding the diet that, is the quick fix or, all of these things. So we know that we're wired to do that. Yet we also have this inbuilt need, of course, for the feeling of safety. And if we're not in a safe place, we can do all the sort of things which are going to only harm us in the short and the longer term. So that's a really interesting conundrum that actually at the front end, you've got to do the thing that isn't quite so easy, maybe, in order that down the line you feel safer and able to show up in the best way that you can because your nervous system becomes more relaxed.
With evolution, we have developed ourselves into a place of physical, mental unease. We have digital world, we lose connection with one another on a real basis, on a touch real basis. And it's really hard for me because all I want everyone to do is just do all the basics that are actually free to start with for a good 12 weeks and see how their lives change. But the world that we live in pulls that away from us.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You've really helped me to change my perspective during this conversation because I've always believed that people know what to do, you know what to eat, you know that you need to exercise. And actually, the question is about why you're not. But actually, I can really see from what you're sharing with me that actually maybe that isn't the point at all. And actually, the first point is around the education so that you do know what you need to do. And in a way that is not just the blanket, you must eat 2,000 calories if you're a woman and do this and do that, but actually learning first what your body needs. And then we can have the conversation about doing the do.
I think that we do need to start from a place of education because who is going to be motivated to do something they don't want to do if they don't know why they're doing it? Yeah. We need to understand why we're doing things. And then we have that connection to, I'm definitely doing that because that's why. That's how my body works. Of course, I'm going to do that. Everyone grabs for their water when we have these conversations because we know that we're made mostly of water. We know that brain fog can be cured momentarily. Like if we hydrate, we know that we can get stronger. If we hydrate, we know we can lose weight. If we hydrate. It's all about learning how we can bring our bodies back to a pure state of homeostasis, where, with all the greatness of how we were born, with all the capabilities to heal ourselves, to grow and to develop and do all of these things, if we can learn the basics of how to do that and why the things work, I think so many more people would want it for themselves and want it for their children, because that's the key. Yeah. It can't be dealing with just one generation. It has to be with the people that are bringing up the next generation, because otherwise it's just a waste of time and it starts and it stops in the same place.
Mm-hmm. Which is really interesting, because there was one question I wanted to ask you, that if you were standing in front of a bunch of 10-year-olds now, what would you want to tell them? What would your big message to them be? Or to the parents of 10-year-olds equally?
10-year-olds, did you know that your IQ is still developing right now, and that the fact of human and nature connectivity is going to help creativity, which helps improve your IQ for later on in life? Don't you think you want to put that phone down?
There's a good start.
Put that phone down. Let's not allow you a phone until you at least go to secondary school and all those computer games. I had a child come and spend some time here at the cafe for, where was it? Boxing Day. And it was such a pleasure to have him here and to watch him play. He really is a connected child to what's going on around him, compared to some other children that I see that would more than happily go out to a cafe with their parents and sit and be occupied on a device of some form. Yeah, that would be one thing. This is so hard to put down into one thing. I would definitely want them to know why they enjoy doing the things that they do, so it gives them encouragement to continue doing it and not to let other things pop up when they turn 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, just to drop things.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point. My two children are 13 and 15, and we go to the gym together quite regularly. And I often ask them to connect to how they feel when they come out of the gym, so that they recognize that sort of that lovely rush that you get from having done some exercise, but to make that association for them, really, that exercise helps you to feel good in your mental health, in your physical health, all aspects of who you are. And making those connections, I think, is such an important part of this.
I absolutely agree. Whether it's the gym, whether it is a walk on the beach, some children might not really, if they want to run around and play on the beach, that's one thing. But when they leave the beach, having been so close to nature and different forms of elements, that, they leave and they have such a higher self-acceptance at that moment. Yeah. They have such a higher positivity, such a higher energy level. And it's not because they've been running around building sandcastles. It's because where they're doing it. And, there are so many parts of it that I just wish that we could have them understand a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been an amazing conversation, Lauren. I think the work that you're doing is so important, literally life-changing, not just for yourself, but for all of the other people who have the pleasure to come into connection with you. I really want to support that, and, how we can get this message out in the world in a big way. And, thank you for sharing the journey so far. And I'm sure it's only just the beginning.
Thank you so much. I'm really proud of the journey so far, and I'm really excited to see what's coming.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Becoming Unapologetically Me. Make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, so you never miss an episode.